All right, we will get started. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for week 3 of our Redefining Wellness sessions with Jana. These last couple weeks have been awesome. I look forward to these sessions each week. And Jana and I were just saying how the month has really flown by. Like we're on session 3 of 4. So it's May will be over before we know it. But anyways, Jana, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks again for taking the time to really invest in your wellness. Over the last 2 weeks, we've been building. We've been building on some concepts that are simple, don't take much time, but really just require you to be educated about them and then decide if and how you can fit them into your life. So, the next layer of information this week is about two really important tissues in our body, our muscular tissue and our fascial tissue. All right. So, you guys, I'm going to give you this is not going to be like an anatomy or a physiology lesson today, but I always find that if I don't understand the why behind a concept or, an idea that someone is trying to share with me and maybe encourage me to bring into my life, if I can't connect those dots, there's less of a chance that I'm going to make that, a real effort or have a goal to bring that into my lifestyle. So let me tell you about muscle and fascia and why it's so critical to understand the difference between the two. Even in the chat, or if you click on the reactions button, is there anybody on this call who flexibility is an issue? Like maybe you've never been able to touch your toes, or you feel maybe like the Tin Man after heavy rain. Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting okay there. I'm getting thumbs up and some hands up. And so let me help you understand something, gang. Is that flexibility is not a genetic like a genetically programmed. There are flexible people and there's non-flexible people. Not at all. And in fact, the biggest indicator of being flexible and having movable joint structures or not is the health of a system in our body called fascia. Okay. So it's not like the fascia on a roof or on a house. And it's not like facial tissue, it's fascia, Fascia. So fascia is connective tissue. All right. Muscle visualized for me like an elastic band. A muscle can stretch and then it can go back. Sometimes you can overstretch or strain a muscle. Yes, absolutely. All right. But in general, it has the ability to be dynamic. Fascia, on the other hand, is a little bit different. Okay. If you think of muscle like that elastic band, fascia is like a plastic, not the reusable, but a plastic grocery bag. All right. If you grabbed onto the plastic of a grocery bag and you very slowly pulled your fingers apart, the bag would stretch. Okay. But there would be a point where you would start to get, it would get too thin and then you would make a hole. Or if you went really fast, you would make a hole. All right. So just understand that these two tissues have a different makeup, a different consistency. Now, now that you understand that, think of the millions of muscle fibers we have in our body. All right. Think of them like a spaghetti noodle. All right. If those individual spaghetti noodles are individual muscle fibers, fascia literally encases like sausage. It encases the spaghetti noodle, so it completely surrounds it. All right. Then muscle fibers are bundled, and then fascia encases those bundles, and then bundles are bundled, and then fascia encases those bundles. So fascia and muscle is kind of like marble cheese. If you had like slices of cheese and someone said to you, can I just have like the white part of the cheese or can I just have the orange part of the cheese, it would be very challenging to, like, maybe not challenging but time consuming to like take a knife and cut out the orange from the white part of your marble cheese. When fascia is unhealthy, and this is why we're doing this in week 3, the more um, the more dehydrated we are and the more over caffeinated we are, fascial tissue will become very unhealthy. And instead of it being like a silky spider web, almost like in the late 80s and early 90s, we used to crimp our hair. Some of you probably remember crimping irons. I do. Fascia should look like that, like almost like an accordion wave of like really silky tissue. And when you're over caffeinated and dehydrated, it is going to look like dust bunnies or balls of cotton batting. It's not going to look consistent. And what it's actually going to start to do is adhere or stick to all those little spaghetti noodle muscle fibers that it is surrounding. Okay. So now it's sticking and almost like a boa constrictor snake that like spirals around its prey and squeezes, it constricts. That's really what fascia does. Now, when fascia is healthy, fascia and muscle are supposed to glide along each other, just like a little kid going down a water slide. Okay. The reality is, because of things like we've talked about, dehydration, poor posture, not a lot of breath exchange, that tissue adheres. Okay. And so when it does that, you guys, it actually sticks to muscles, organs, bones at a force of 2,000 pounds per square inch. So it is very sticky. And here's what else I can tell you about fascia. Cellulite in our body is fascial tissue that has puckered to the outermost layer of our skin, and then it gets drawn down, so we get that cottage cheese sensation to our skin. That's cellulite, you guys. So why is this important to know? When you start to make positive changes in your life, simple changes like we've been talking about these last 3 Tuesdays, you know, taking your water with you, and taking in more water in a day, doing your breathing, checking in with your posture, all of those things will start to lead themselves to improving this fascial tissue. Do you remember last week when I shared that the body uses hydration in a priority system? And I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit. I was going to start talking about fascia. So remember that in that pyramid, the first hydration hydrates your brain. The second part of the pyramid are your vital organs. And the bottom part of the pyramid are the tissues of your muscles, your fascia, your joints. And if we are looking to increase or improve the health of our fascial system, we have to be taking in enough hydration into our body to be able to do that. Okay. So I told you about 10 minutes ago that muscle is like an elastic band and fascia is like that grocery bag. So it's different. Okay. Um, you can actually see fascia quite easily. Sometimes when you buy like chicken breasts at the store, that white film that we scrape away, that's fascia. Okay. Fascia does not stretch like muscle does because it has a different makeup. The tissue is different. Fascia needs two things to be released. It needs heat and it needs force. Okay. So I have with me today this little pinky ball. All right. This is a fascia release ball. We sell these at the studio. I don't know, they're like $13 or something like that. But here's why I wanted to show this to you. You might watch videos on YouTube and see people using like lacrosse balls to roll out their feet if they have plantar fasciitis, or their glutes if they have some SI issues. And I would much rather if you don't have a pinky ball and you're using what's around you at home, if you have a tennis ball and if you have a lacrosse ball, my personal opinion, and there's lots of opinions about this, lots of people would disagree with me, I would put the lacrosse ball back in the lacrosse bag and I would use the tennis ball. And here's why. This fascia ball, you can see how I'm squeezing it. It has a little bit of tensegrity to it. So it's actually going to, when I start using this on my hands, on my feet, on my glutes, like, oh my gosh, you guys, if you have like shoulder tension, it's amazing what you can do with this little ball. the little bit of give sends a really clear message to the nervous system that the body can relax over top of this little tool and create the release. All right. So that's where the heat and the force actually come through using this little ball. There's an amazing foot sequence that we do because we have 26 bones in our feet. We learned that last week, making sure we have the right weight distribution through our feet. Using this little pinky ball is a great way to get movement in those 26 bones. Because you guys, you know that a lot of people will get arthritis like in their toes and in their hands, right? Because there's lots of joints, small bones, they're very dexterous. But especially in our feet, because we're in shoes all the time, all of those little joints that are meant for movement, right? A joint is meant to move, but yet we're stuck in a shoe all day long, taking away that movement. And what happens over time is the joints actually start to degenerate because they're not being asked to do their job. I can't take arthritis away by adding this concept, but if you are someone who lives in that body, you can absolutely slow the progression of the degeneration just by starting to get some healthy blood flow to that area. And that's what this does, you guys. So, physiologically, what's happening is as you're working the tissue, I even do a whole sequence like around my face. I call it my facelift workout, just to bring fresh blood to the skin of the face because it's so thin. And being a little bit dehydrated will. Remember, I told you guys last week I had the flu on Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, it was like, the aging process had, just expedited itself because I was so dehydrated. So when we work with this and we bear weight into it and we create, the movement through that fascial tissue, blood flow that is nutrient rich and oxygen rich is actually going to make its way in toward that area of your body. And so because fascia does not, let me just think of how I can say this. I'll say it this way. So muscles start and end at a joint structure. So I have my bicep here. My bicep starts at my elbow, ends at my shoulder. All right. My quadricep in my legs, my quadricep group of muscles start at my knee, end at my hip. Fascia is not like that. We have this fascial webbing is literally throughout our whole body and it bypasses muscles. If if you really like to kind of geek out on this stuff, it's an old video, I'll tell you this, but if you go to YouTube, um, search up the fuzz speech, Fuzz speech by Gil Headley. And Gil Headley is an anatomist and he talks all about fascia. There's even part of the video where they put like a little camera inside someone's body and you can see how overnight fascia is growing in a way that is like constricting blood flow. And so every day we should be doing a little bit of work in a certain part of our body. And you know what, you guys, like if you don't have a ball, a foam roller works nice. Or you know what, I was even working one day at my kitchen island and it's made of granite. And I was just focusing, right? And maybe some of you experience this where you get that low grade kind of, it feels like your eyes sink back in your head. You might get a little bit of a headache at the brow line. So I just like laid my head on on my island and just started kind of rolling it back and forth. And that actually is another way that you can get some fascia release. You can use your fingers. I mean, it's a little bit different than using a tool. But, a rolling pin, a water bottle, I wouldn't use like a glass one. Plastic one wouldn't really make a difference, but one that's stainless steel, definitely you can use it as well. So that's what you need to understand is that it's a web. It literally is a web. And the longest piece of fascia in our body is called the superficial backline of fascia. And it actually starts underneath our feet and it goes up the back of our legs. And then it goes to the back of the knee basically. And then another piece starts at the back of the knee, goes up the back of the legs, up the glutes, up the spine, up the neck, comes around our skull and attaches underneath our or in on the inside upper edge of the eye sockets. So that's one long piece of fascia. So just think about this. Think of the physics of this. If you've been driving or sitting, or your posture, like we talked about last week, is forward rounded, okay? So think about the distance from your feet traveling up your legs, back. Or he never recycles stuff in today's recycle stuff. Sorry about that noise. So when I'm sitting here in this rounded posture, the distance from my feet to my head decreases. If I improve my posture, I have to pull on that superficial back line. And that's why, as we're working through, remember last week, the 6 weeks of posture, weeks 1 and 2, you're checking morning, noon, and supper time. Weeks 3 and 4, you're adding a snack in between each of that, a posture snack. And then week 5 and 6, you're adding 3 more throughout the day. So you might find yourself here like 20 times a day. But unless you start to learn that the fascial system is critical to changing our posture and improving our blood flow, getting our bones to where they really need to live so our muscles can respond properly, it's going to be a longer change process if you're not understanding the role that fascia plays. All right. So the other chronic place that fascia will show itself is at the hairline. So this little ball on the hairline, there's lots of really great acupressure points that you can work. And you guys, when you're doing this work, like if you're laying on your tummy or just sitting by your table, I don't ever want you to force your shoulder into it, or your glute if you're sitting on it for sciatic issues, or your head if you've got headaches. It's just like a very natural, like if I was to lay my head here, this was the table, and just literally move my head side to side, and the ball rolls across my forehead. I'm just kind of using the natural weight of my body, and I'm letting my breath be my guide. And here's why that's critical. Okay. If you're doing fascia release, and I'm going to tell you this, it doesn't feel awesome. And sometimes you might even use the H word, like it kind of hurts sometimes, but you're still in control. Like at any minute, I can come off of this ball and then the pain will go away. But the discomfort, gang, is actually directly related to the health of the fascial tissue. So if you get on this ball and, let's say I went to the range for the first time this year with my husband, and I only hit I don't know, maybe 50 balls, but my traps are so sore now 2 days later. So I got on my pinky ball today. I put it just kind of right here on the inside edge of my shoulder. And I like laying down on the floor. You can do it up against the wall, but you just find these little spots and you breathe through them, because when that discomfort happens, if you hold your breath as a response to the discomfort, your body actually takes that message as you're in danger. And so the body's protection mechanisms will actually lock down. You're not going to notice it. It's a nervous system protection response, but you're not going to get the same benefit out of it as if you just chilled out as best you can, did your breathing, move that arm a little bit while you were releasing. And it makes a huge difference. Now, remember that superficial backline I told you about that starts in your feet and ends under the sockets or in the sockets of your eyes? If you're someone who has never been able to touch your toes, I guarantee that once you understand how this fascial system works, you will be able to touch your toes. At least you'll get halfway closer to the floor in one, 5 or 7 minute session. And then if you consistently did that a couple times a week, you'd be touching the floor. And it's because of that superficial backline. So think of that piece of fascia like a railway track, okay? It is one long system. So if I work my feet, and that's where the train tracks start, it's going to impact everything else above. So if you're someone who traditionally has really tight hamstrings, that working our feet, rolling out our feet. And I just want to do like a little demo so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'm gonna just you're gonna miss my you're not gonna see my face, but I just want you to see my feet. Okay, so here's my pinky ball. This would be an example of what I would take my one of my classes through in a class. So I want the ball underneath the knuckles of my toes. I don't want the ball under my toe pads. I want to get to the knuckles. And I don't know if you can see this on camera or not, probably not where the way the light is, but in a healthy foot, as the ball rolls past, these are called metatarsals. They're just like our knuckles in our hands. We have knuckles in our feet. And as we roll through, like if you guys were here, you could see I have like a little white knuckle popping up on my baby toe. And then there's the little white knuckle on my fourth toe. My third toe, my knuckle is there, but not as pronounced. Then the second one is good and the first one is good. So when I do this, I'm fairly assertive on the ball, like I'm pressing my weight into it, and I'm just rolling through my feet. I'm rolling through the arch of my foot. I'm rolling all the way through the bottom of my foot to the baby toe side of my foot. You can make like little designs back and forth, zigzags, but you're going to spend about like 3 minutes per side. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. That's the beauty of it, is there's no wrong way to do it. And it might feel like there's little bits of gravel in that foot. It might, there might be a spot that just kind of sends you into orbit. But we have to understand that if we don't listen to our body, that's our body's way of communicating. It means there's some sort of dysfunction there, a lack of hydration, a lack of movement, or a combination. And if we don't deal with things like that, you guys, that's where, things like plantar fasciitis start to spring up from. And so if you have a chance, or if you're in the city, or you can get these on Amazon, like invest in a proper fascia ball, because it'll be one of the best things you ever invest in your entire life. Like I said, people with sciatic pain can roll their glutes. So I lay on my tummy sometimes and just roll through the front of my arm because of all of this stuff that we do. If you're someone that tends to grip through your jaw, there's a really nice, like sometimes I just like will lay and be watching TV, and I'll get like these referrals up into my head or down into my neck or in my ear. And I'm just stacking it into my life. Like next week is all about how do we make these concepts continue to live beyond, the 25th of May. That's the goal. And that's going to be my ask of you next week, is to start thinking about, how has this been going this month for you? What have you been bringing into your life? And this is the next tool. When you understand that this actually can improve movement, joint range of motion, it actually slows the aging process, gang, because again, with a lack of blood flow, um, everything starts to we live on a planet with gravity, and everything just spirals down and in. And that's how actually our posture starts to age us prematurely, is everything comes down and forward. It gets frozen. All right. And then there's that lack of blood flow. And we've been talking about that a little bit each of these 3 weeks. And so I hope you understand really how critical that concept of blood flow is. Remember, I told you earlier that cellulite is fascial tissue that's puckered to the outermost layer of your skin. So, using the ball. So women with our makeup, our percent of body fat tends to be higher than men's, to lay on this and roll out through the outer thigh or the inner thigh. What's happening through that heat and force is we are actually like, we need good fats in our life. We need fat cells to live, right? But fat is also stored energy. So if we're trying to change the look and feel of our body, we need to be able to access that energy. And if those fat cells are literally frozen in that fascial tissue, they're really hard to access. So if you start adding a little practice like this into your life, it really can change how your body looks, how your body feels. There's our diaphragm muscle. We've talked about our diaphragm, right, with our breathing. So the diaphragm kind of follows the crest of the rib cage. I'll do like a little pinky ball release on my diaphragm. I'll take a breath in And then as I'm exhaling softly, I kind of just let the ball follow my ribs. Um, I tend to pop my ribs a little bit. And I think that's from my years of figure skating. So even now at 47, I still have that habit. So my diaphragm attachments get really tight. You should be able to, did we talk about this? You should be able to get your fingers between your ribs and your body, like at least to that first, if not the second knuckle. There should be that much. And if some of you that do massage therapy, you might have a therapist that kind of gets their fingers up in there and it doesn't feel very good, but it's really important because those diaphragm attachments is what opens us up to take the breath in that we need to, flourish every single day. So this half an hour feels like 5 minutes to me. I don't know about you guys, but I just looked and I was like, really? Is it 8:43? That's my intro because Lord knows I could go on and on and on about this. That's my intro to muscle and fascia. I hope you understand now the relationship between posture and fascia, the relationship between hydration and fascia. The relationship between the muscle and the fascia, right? Like if you're trying to heal a tendonitis or a bursitis, how are we ever going to heal that if we don't understand what those tissues need to be able to actually do the healing, to get rid of the inflammation? Heat and force are critical to be able, to do this. Like you can use touch, but that 2,000 pounds per square inch is a pretty intense, adhesion. So, gang, does anybody have any questions, comments? Put them in the chat. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Eric. You guys, I love this stuff. I don't know. Sometimes I talk so fast because I just love it, and the words just I have to catch myself. Sometimes I feel like an auctioneer. But Bethany, any last words or questions for me, or last words for the group before we sign off for tonight?
Well, yeah, I think like people are saying in the chat, Eric and Frida are both saying that it was an awesome talk and great information and things that we just don't always think about, right? And I remember once when I was in a choir, our choir conductor, to get us to kind of like relax on our feet, made us roll our feet with tennis balls.
Amazing.
And yeah, and when we do one foot, then the difference between the two, like it's crazy what a couple of minutes of kind of rolling out the fascia and the muscles can really do. So this is something that I definitely need to work on more. I have a ball, I just don't use it as much as I should. So
keep it with you. Oh, I can't, you guys, when we were flying, like I would always take an extra pinky ball in my purse. I cannot tell you how many pinky balls I've given away to strangers at airports that have been like laying at the gate, working out some kind of a knot or so yeah, I can't wait for the day when I can load my carry-on luggage with pinky balls and start sharing with people all over.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jana. If anybody else has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Again, Florence is saying great info. Thank you all so much for joining us. Week 3 of 4. Oh my goodness, 1 week left. Yeah, like you were saying, the half an hour just breezes by. I feel like it's so much at once, but it could be so much longer. I love it. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you're watching the recording, we hope that you really found it valuable. Have a great rest of your night, everyone. Thank you, Jana, as well.
All right. See you guys Tuesday. Have a great long weekend.